6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I got it.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely
Ready?
Ranking review. Ranking review. Ranking review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, valued listeners. You've found Rank and Review episode 209. This episode is the first of a two-part odyssey in which Mr. Lee Beckmann and your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons are going to look at John Rambo and Harry Callahan. That's right, it's Rambo versus Dirty Harry. There are 5 Dirty Harry movies. There are 5 Rambo pictures. We're going to review them all. We're going to rank them together. We're going to have the most macho, testosterone-laden battle ever recorded, hopefully. So yes, just by listening to this here episode, you may become more masculine. You'll have a higher testosterone count, etc. So yeah, we have 2 franchises that mirror each other in a lot of ways that I had not formally or acknowledged or realized. So it actually proved out to be more of an interesting episode than I'd expected, and the strengths and weaknesses were found in different places than I'd expected. And I'm wondering if you agree. Do you have a preference between Dirty Harry and John Rambo? If you do, you should let me know, because as always, you can send your feedback to ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. I keep forgetting to mention, but it maybe should go without saying at this point, that Rank and Review contains spoilers for the films being reviewed, and it contains coarse fucking language, especially from its host and random Canadian. So I'm sorry. The website is ranknreview.ca if you want to check out some of the other episodes, and I really appreciate your ears. I would really appreciate it if you told other people that like movies to listen to the podcast. And if you need something to fill your ears with, check out the Shelf Shedding Movie Show, hosted by Jason Dubray, and check out the Terror Table podcast. And if this happens to catch your ears before the 3rd of June, 2022, which is, I realize, highly unlikely, Mitch Oliver has a film premiering in Saskatoon at the Broadway Theatre at 7:45 p.m. So that is The Druid's Hand. And, I'm a filmmaker in Saskatchewan, so I like to support other filmmakers in Saskatchewan. Plus, Mitch is a cool guy. He's been on the show. So if this catches your ears, and if you can make it to his screening, check that out. And in the meantime, thank you for tuning in to Rank and Review. Let's get dirty, and let's talk about Rambo. Mr. Lee Beckmann is joining your host and random Canadian in the garage, in person, face to fucking face.
I'm home. We're home. I'm back. It's been too long.
I want to once again apologize for the continual technical difficulties that we've been having with these recording sessions. It's just the great thing about having you here, other than it's great to see you, is that that's not going to be an issue. We're going to both sound crystal clear, not one of us on the phone, not one of us through the computer. I feel like the age of COVID has put this dark cloud over everything, but mainly my podcast. It's my podcast that's been hit hardest by COVID.
I agree. As long as this is running, we're okay. Yes. We're okay.
Anyway, this is going to be an epic conversation that we're going to have, and we're going to talk about 2 very masculine figures. I suppose, I don't know, would you count Dirty Harry's action movies, or would you say they're more thrillers?
I would neo-noir police thrillers. They tend to veer action at some point, but I would argue neo-noir.
There's always a point where, in spite of all the other things that's going on, Harry has to stop what he's doing and kill a random bad guy who's robbing a bank or a restaurant or something.
They are violent pictures. They are.
Anyway.
And there's car chases.
Yeah, so Dirty Harry was probably the first of it we're going to see. And the second we're going to talk about is Rambo. John Rambo.
I'm already dripping with sweat.
Both have 5 films in the franchise. Both of them are very of their time. Both of them have aged questionably.
Questionably? You say that like a question?
And both of them have things to say about, I don't know, this sort of dude bro angle of action movies.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Yes, so, one could even argue, the toxic masculinity, but
I guess you'd have to say in a fight, probably John Rambo was going to win in a physical fist
hands
fight.
Down. He would snap, Dirty Harry like a twig.
But as far as macho dick measuring, that would be a whole other conversation altogether.
Yeah.
But what we're going to do, Mr. Beckmann and I, we're going to discuss all 10 of these films.
Yeah.
And then we're going to, I guess, rank them. Do you want to rank them separately and together, or just together?
I think we should just do it in one long list.
One big group of 10?
Yes.
I guess within that group of 10, you'll also be getting the list of the Dirty Harry and John Rambo.
Yeah.
So who do you want to talk about first in this by way of introduction?
Well, I want to talk it more as the theme of the show. Because I do like some of the themes of your shows, best episode ever, or I don't know, WTF. So for this one, I kind of want to do the whole Manchurian Candidate kind of theme. I sort of think that in an alternate universe, much like your Predator 2 review,
right?
I think both of these characters are actually secret agent assassins from some shadowy organization known as maybe the Help or something,
right?
Because they're both addicted to the righteous kill. they it's not just sort of oops, I showed up at the right place wrong time. I secretly think that they are addicted to the righteous kill.
I think a case could be made that both of them approach being fascist murderers, but
oh no, they love it. They love it. Make no mistake about them. They are psychopaths. I will even say that Rambo turns into Frankenstein's monster. By I say the 4th film for sure, but we'll get there. These two are monsters. They are serial killers. They enjoy what they do.
Infamously, sort of famous film critic by way of internet troll before there were internet trolls, Pauline Kael, called Dirty Harry a fascist movie. And
yes.
I actually went and read the review that she wrote, and she makes a pretty good case, to be fair. But I want to be careful about this kind of judgment. I'm a person who enjoys your Friday the 13th and your Nightmare on Elm Street, and I am very capable of separating reality and fantasy.
I think they were trying to have their cake and eat it too. It's also what's going on in the world, the time and place that Dirty Harry came out.
Yeah.
But it was definitely in courting the controversy of it. I actually think that Dirty Harry is probably one of the more expensive exploitation pictures of the last 50 years. Because what it's trying to do is how dirty can this cop really be?
It benefits from being part of that era of 70s crime picture.
Yeah.
Where the style and the vibe and the feel of the movies, we've talked about this before, it feels super authentic.
Yeah.
But just because something feels super authentic on the screen does not in any way mean that it's a reflection of reality. Yeah. And I think in almost all of these movies, I tried to actually go back and keep track, but Callahan shoots a dude in the back in almost every one of these movies.
He is a serial killer. I am not that is how I'm describing them.
I remember memorably at the beginning of Deadpool, I'm just using that as an example because it's fresh in my mind because I just watched it last night, but one of the dudes at the beginning who tries to take him out drops the gun and runs. He's
Yep.
unarmed.
Yep.
He's fleeing.
Yep.
His back is to Callahan.
Yep.
And Callahan murders him.
Yep.
And it's like...
And we're supposed to cheer. That's the thing.
This was 1988. This was the age of cops kill without remorse, and
Yeah.
we like that.
Yeah.
And in 1988, yay, I guess. But today, 2022, it's a different age. So you look back at that Dirty Harry stuff, especially because it's trying to present quote-unquote real.
Yeah.
I can completely just let go of any kind of reality, especially the deeper we get into Rambo.
Yeah.
But it's the attempted earnestness that I think in the end of the day is hurting Dirty Harry. Because I have to say, when I came into this like versus episode,
Yeah.
I thought like, you know, I was really looking forward to both of them.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be more of a struggle to get through Rambo and sort of a nostalgic fun ride through Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
And my expectation kind of got reversed upon watching them.
Well, there's two different kinds of Dirty Harry movies. There's the sort of neo-noir detective stories, and that's two of them. And the other two are really kind of right-wing cartoons that are really trying to plug those conservative values. And those are kind of more hard to watch. Where the Rambo films are, with the exception of the first one, really always have been cartoons. Like, they are. Like, but
They gave up the struggle in a weird way. I
Yeah.
think in both franchises, again, I don't want to speak for you, but in
Yeah.
both franchises, the first entry is loudly the best.
yes.
And
Yeah.
there's certainly a reason for that. In both cases, the characters are really well defined,
Yeah.
problematic or not. And I think
Yeah.
both characters are very problematic in their own ways,
Yeah.
but by design, you know.
Yeah.
Rambo is a damaged war veteran who has violence fundamentally like burned into his system.
Yeah.
As much as the Brian Dennehy character who starts all the ball rolling with this lifetime of violence,
Yeah.
post-war violence that Rambo's about to go on, is a dick to him.
Yeah.
He's also not wrong his instinct that this guy is violent and dangerous. It's just his fault that he triggers the violence and danger.
Well, he goes way out of his way. Like, he makes every wrong decision.
Yeah.
I don't... we can get into Rambo because...
We'll talk about it in the movie.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm just saying generally, like, they define that character.
Yeah.
He is broken, and there's... Violence is fundamentally part of who he is.
Yeah.
Callahan... You know, he doesn't respect the powers that be. He doesn't like the system.
He's a libertarian.
And he wants to do things by his own terms and more or less does things by his own terms. And he can, you know, be halfway through his lunch, shoot a bunch of guys, and go back and finish his lunch and not be troubled by it.
Yeah.
And not only are we not supposed to question it,
Yeah.
we are supposed to think it is super cool.
Yep.
And in 72, was that Dirty Harry or 73?
We could definitely look that
We'll
up.
figure it
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
When that was released, I genuinely think it was cool, and I think like the more it ages, the more the edge gets sharper and
Yeah.
sharper and sharper.
Yeah.
It was an edgy movie right out the gate. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to downplay that,
Yeah.
but it's one of those things where it seems like over the line almost now at times.
Well,
Comparatively,
It was argued it was over the line originally.
Right.
We have to keep in mind that the late 60s had just happened. Vietnam is like still ongoing.
Yep.
And much like today in a lot of ways, there was starting to be a huge social shift. And so Dirty Harry, whether it wanted it to be or not, all of a sudden became this sort of giant response from another political edge, the conservative edge, if you will, where you had young people smoking dope and kind of having sex in parks and trip out and free love and our government is evil, the Vietnam War is on and yada yada yada, all of that. And so there was this backlash all of a sudden, which was Dirty Harry, and the forces sort of came together in that regard.
yeah.
And I somehow expect, in some ways, not right now, but at some point the pendulum is starting to turn a little bit. I do wonder if we'll get another kind of form of Dirty Harry in the future.
Well, certainly this kind of sentimentality hasn't gone away by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
But it's more criticized now than celebrated.
Oh, yes.
So, and I think that Dirty Harry, especially as we move along with it, is sort of asking us to celebrate it a little bit.
Oh, without a doubt.
But they're also doing it with a straight face. Whereas I really feel like Rambo is it gets so ludicrous that it has to be just deliberate. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
They famously, of course, Charlie Sheen starred in a couple of satire movies that were
Yeah.
basically making fun of the Rambo movies.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of the stuff with Richard Crenna and the relationship with Rambo, it very make fun of them.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it's so macho and so, like, over the top.
Yeah.
But in that sort of great popcorn movie thing,
Yeah.
this is the scene that has to happen that will set up the action so that Rambo can go and kill
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And yes, one would say maybe it's a weakness that I can absolutely see the structural bones of a Rambo movie much clearer than I can in a Dirty Harry movie. One of the Dirty Harry movies is a rape revenge
Yes.
movie, so like,
It's dark. It's dark.
I also think the interesting parallel is the stars we have of these two movies.
Yep.
In the 70s, arguably, there was no bigger star in the world than Clint Eastwood, and in the 80s, arguably, there was no bigger star in the world than Sylvester Stallone.
Yep.
And Stallone has several franchises, but I like Rambo, or I guess Rocky's probably his signature franchise since he was more creatively invested in
He
those.
directed 3 films in that franchise, yeah.
Clint directed one of the Dirty Harry movies.
He did.
Stallone's in denial about his aging to
Yes.
like a ridiculous degree, especially when we get to Last Blood. And again, we'll have that conversation.
Yeah.
But Clint definitely knows that, you know, he's in his 90s, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm surprised he's not dead.
Yeah. Well, he's definitely lived hard, played hard. Where these movies lead us to, too, is really interesting. Like, almost in both cases, and I don't want to spoil anything, like, with their last entries, I feel like they definitely went into Last Blood knowing it was the last Rambo movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like they, on some sense, must have known with Deadpool that the time was running out for Callahan.
Yeah.
I think that they both deserved a better landing than they're given.
I agree.
So
I agree.
It's weird because I didn't choose these two because they aligned so perfectly, but as I watched them, they aligned more and more.
Well, I think I will say this about Dirty Harry. Without Dirty Harry, there's no Snake Plissken.
No.
There's no really John Rambo in a lot of ways. There's no Martin Riggs.
He's the anti-hero.
He is one of the archetypes of what became as at least the 80s action hero.
Yeah.
They're the king of the one-liners here. We've got at least 2 classic one-liners here. I mean, you can mock them if you must.
No, they're immortal.
But every film has, some kind of one-liner.
Every film tries to have that moment.
Yes. That is better said.
Yes. I think 2 of them nail it.
Yeah. And they do actually come in strange times in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And they repeat them, which I don't think you should. But regardless. So you have, as a lover of cinema... I have to give credit where credit is due that, Dirty Harry was the archetype for what did become sort of the 80s action hero. He wasn't maybe as big and muscly, I say as Arnold or Stallone, or even as fast as, Seagal or Van Damme. But definitely the sort of like scowly, grunty, I hate the system, one-lining, shoot him out and let God sort him out later. Kill him all and let God sort him out. Action hero. Like Dirty Harry Callahan, is that archetype.
And a lot of 80s and like cops movies had that, know, like the Murtaugh Riggs Lethal Weapon, cops kill without remorse thing. I really do think it was kind of born out of Dirty Harry. Whereas they took the edge out of it and tried to just make it a straight fun action movies, and they don't want you to think about it, or they're not trying to make a statement. And the later into Dirty Harry, the closer to Lethal Weapon they kind of become in that way.
Yeah, but at the same time, they do try and be serious and poke the political bear. Mm-hmm. They also do respond to their critics, which is interesting as well.
Well, I feel like Clint is there to sort of stand proud for, the boomer generation, sort of chip on their shoulder, Mm-hmm. He's your racist uncle with a Magnum, right? He's representing that perspective.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, Rambo's here to re-win the Vietnam War. He's here to make us convinced that, no, we didn't lose. We won Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
And those are both ridiculous things. Like those are both ridiculous purposes. And just recognize that, and then I think you can enjoy those movies. But if you choose to take these movies too seriously, then you'll hate these movies.
Oh, God.
And you're not listening to this, so I don't know who I'm talking to.
And that is sort of the struggle I had with these movies is, you know, why can't I just turn off and enjoy the bloodshed or, you know, at least the sort of aesthetic, you know, artistry of some of these films? Why can't it just be sort of junk food in that sort of way? But at the same time, more especially with the Dirty Harry, but the John Rambo films, they just... Anyways.
I have a dumb smile on my face.
Yeah.
I don't think Dirty Harry wants me to have a dumb smile on my face. I think they want me to be moved and to think, but I have a dumb smile on my face. That's how I choose to enjoy it.
Yes, and that's probably the smartest way.
Should we list them off? Is there anything else you want to say before?
No, I think we've talked quite a bit, actually.
So we have 5 Dirty Harry films and 5 John Rambo films. The Dirty Harry movies are Dirty Harry, Magnum Force, The Enforcer, Sudden Impact, and The Deadpool. Rambo, we have First Blood. We have Rambo, First Blood Part 2. Yeah. Then we have Rambo 3.
Yay!
Then we have Rambo.
Yep.
And then we have Rambo Last Blood.
Yep.
If they could have a more confusing line. Titles, you know, to keep everybody straight.
Yeah.
Yes, a distinct pattern will be noticed here, but I think we're going to have some fun with it.
Yep.
This is about a movie about a couple of killers. Harry Callahan. And a homicidal maniac. The one with the badge is Harry. Oh! There were a lot of reasons they called him Dirty Harry. And he kept inventing new ones.
Don't pass out on me.
If there was ever a movie that was of its time, that sort of spoke of the early 70s and the vibe of that tactile, grungy crime film, like it's Dirty Harry. And there are others like it, and I think that are even a little bit more seriously minded. The French Connection comes to mind.
Yeah, this is that almost the same year? Or
I'm not even sure. But
I think we're a year away from the French Connection.
But I mean, as far as the central character of the movie being a cop who blurs the lines and is kind of overt. In French Connection, he's very overt about his racism, really. And And here, Dirty Harry is very overt in his sort of... He's going to do it his way and usually solving things with his Magnum. I think the movie benefits so much from that time and that style where they just made crime movies in such a crazy way. Like, you could do the list. Or like Serpico, Mean Streets, fucking Godfather. Like all of these crime movies came out that were just like, that are still watched today. You know,
yes,
50,
Dirty Harry is completely and utterly, undeniably watchable.
Yeah. 50 years later, people are still talking about it. You know, like we're... it obviously made an impression, and there's a reason that it's still around. Coming into the Dirty Harry franchise, I was, like I said, looking forward to it. And once upon a time, you and I did a blaxploitation episode, which was also set in the 70s and largely to deal with crime.
Yeah.
And I was sort of looking forward to watching Shaft because I'd expected it to kind of be this gleefully over-the-top sort of satirical, fun thing. Yeah. And I was a little bit unpleasantly surprised that that's not what they delivered. Now, it's not the movie's fault, but it's not what they delivered. Yeah. I had a memory in my head of what Dirty Harry movies were.
Sure.
And a lot of that was just me being a kid and Dad was watching them. And sometimes I was impatient because I wanted to be watching something else. Yeah. But my memory of them and the reality of them are two different things.
Okay.
I'd forgotten in a lot of ways how self-serious these movies were, how straight-faced.
Sure.
we're juxtaposing these movies against the Rambo franchise. And
Yep.
whereas Rambo gets like more and more comfortable with being ridiculous.
Yep.
I think that Dirty Harry is trying to say stuff. They're trying to make some points.
Okay.
They're trying to score some points. And I don't know that that's necessarily serving an agenda over top of entertaining people, but some of it has aged uncomfortably.
Oh, yes. Yes, that I will agree. I think, and I said this before, that I think there are two different Dirty Harry movies. I think there's the ones that are the sort of the neo-noir detective thriller, like police thriller stories, and then there's the one that are the cartoonish, like over-the-top giggle bazooka shooting at a lighthouse movie, Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
So I sort of turn a little bit, like there are some Dirty Harry movies that are utterly comedically ridiculous, and then there's some really uncomfortable politics, shall we say, that are horribly outdated.
But at the time that this movie was aired, when, for instance, and again, it's dramatically satisfying in the movie.
Yeah.
The killer that he's hunting has been badly wounded, and Dirty Harry is sticking his foot into the wound.
It's an
and the
uncomfortable
guy's
scene.
Screaming. But in the theater, people were cheering this.
Mm-hmm.
That is a thing that happened.
Yes.
Now, it's not that I'm sympathetic to this terrible killer, who, like, again, they go so far out of their way to make him like one of the most evil son of a bitches that ever graced the screen. So no matter what happens to him, we're never going to come close to sympathizing with him.
Yeah.
But real world, everybody is entitled to a defense.
Yep.
And if you're a police officer, you can't torture people for information, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Again, if the movie was asking the question, great. But I think we're like, yeah, Harry, yeah. I also think there is some tactile discomfort in the fact that they literally basically used the Zodiac killer as the map for the Scorpio killer in this movie, including the whole thing with him. Zodiac wrote a letter to the cops saying he was going to shoot kids on a school bus.
Yeah.
And they incorporate a bunch of kids on a school bus into the movie. And it's shot in San Francisco, in and around the area. Like, it's tactless.
Yes.
Tactless. It reminds me of like the Charlton Heston and all of the gun nuts showing up into towns where there'd been school shootings to have NRA rallies.
Yeah.
Like just rubbing salt in the wound unnecessarily. There's a scene in the movie Zodiac, I always remember, where the lead detective on the Zodiac case walks out of the premiere of Dirty Harry.
Yeah,
and,
well, because the character's based off him in real. Yeah.
And I would be sympathetic to that because I don't think I would want to be portrayed as Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
Now, objectively, again, as we look at him as sort of the figurehead of Clint Eastwood, badass
man with
he's
no
gonna
name.
he's gonna clean the streets with his pistol,
Yeah.
and let's just enjoy it as an action movie.
Yeah.
I guess I can get behind that, but it really feels to me like that's not what the movie is trying to be.
Yeah. I think they really needed to get rid of that opening crawl with the saying, thank you to all the brave police officers that have risked
Self-serious there,
because at the heart of it, this is really a pulp film noir exploitation picture.
And the reality of the presentation undercuts that in a weird way.
Yeah, I can buy that. The time and place, I think, made this sort of kind of a response from one area of America, almost the older generation, because we were seeing, an older generation was seeing, our younger folks saying our government was awful, and I'm speaking from an American point of view, not from a Canadian. They were smoking dope in parks and free love, and
we know you hate hippies, Lee. It's okay.
No, I know. Yeah. How dare you? And here was this person that was going to shoot them all and let God sort them out kind of response.
That's right.
Yeah, and so of course the minorities are almost. Well, the criminal minorities are shown as just like evil. And that's kind of just one of those weird pills. We're also, living in a world where, George Floyd was murdered. So there is this reckoning going on with law enforcement.
Oh, we look at the movie differently now. You can't help it.
But that was even present, I think, because at that time, because we had the civil rights movement where a whole swath of police forces were, going into ghettos and on live TV beating up a whole lot of African Americans. Yeah. So the film was even a hot button movie even upon release. It's a big budget exploitation picture.
Yeah.
So I think from that sort of entertainment level, people should go in that sort of way. Like for 1960s, how dirty was our Dirty Harry going to be? He was going to, still obsessed with the righteous kill, and he finds himself even by accident where he's needed somehow to shoot him up and clean up the streets. But sort of take it that way. But I can definitely understand another facet of society having real problems with the moral stance of the film.
The other side of the argument, because I feel like I've been sounding really negative, and the truth is, I do think it's a good movie.
It's a classic movie. That's where it's coming to. Yeah.
Again, I feel like, unfortunately, we have to climb through a bunch of weeds before we can actually get to the meat and potatoes of the movie. But I do think it's a great movie, and there are just these iconic scenes.
Yes.
And it opens with Harry's eating lunch, and across the street a crime starts taking place.
Yeah.
And Harry's friendly with the owner. He tells him to call it in and make sure you say that it's in progress. And then he wades into it and he kills him. And a variation of this scene is going to happen in almost every other one of these Dirty Harry movies.
Oh, yeah.
It's never done better than this.
Yeah.
But they'll stop everything for a random robbery or a random hostage taking, and Harry cleans up.
Yeah.
And the basic satisfaction of bad guys stopped by cool guy works.
Yeah.
But you have to dismiss the rest of it. In a way, it would have been benefited if it was just a dumber, emptier cop versus serial killer movie.
Yeah.
All this social speechifying makes the movie somehow try to be more important than really what really works for the movie is we hate this creepy, scary, heartless serial killer, and we want Harry to do whatever he needs to do, be that cutting through the
black hat.
If he's got to cut through the red tape, he's got to cut through the red tape. And if he has to shoot this guy dead, then maybe he has to shoot this guy dead. Yeah. But it's a slow collision between these two forces, and I am on board for it.
Yeah.
It is not for everyone.
No. It's Don Siegel. I do believe he's also... Didn't he also do Bonnie and Clyde? No, that's not Don Siegel. Anyways, I know Don Siegel was at this point, a respected genre filmmaker. This is one of the blueprints, the archetypes, once again, of the 80s action heroes. This is the film series that, even though there had been classic one-liners before, this is, I think, probably the series that really kind of started it, where our action hero would kill the villain, or at least one of the villains, and say some sort of cheesy line we will now have "Hasta la vista, baby" and "Yippee-ki-yay."
But that became a staple of the action movie, very likely because of this movie.
Yeah, all of Arnold's lines and Stallone's and Dolph Lundgren, on and on and on. This is the film series that started all of that.
This director did The Shootist, The Beguiled, Coogan's Bluff. Lots of He's got a rich history. He's worked with Clint quite a bit, and definitely fit into that era of 70s.
I think he's responsible for at least a couple of classic Warner Brother films, but anyways, this is what you've probably seen the story over and over and over again, but this is because of Dirty Harry. This is it is really the blueprint in that way, and so that's why I think it's sort of a classic in all of the sort of the history of cinema, is that this kind of felt like really the first one. We had John Wayne somewhat, but not as quite a cop thriller. So this is the first real cop tough guy thriller that then got spawned over and over and over again.
And again, John Wayne or even Clint Eastwood himself as a man with no name, that's a different thing. That's the Wild West. Right? This guy's got a badge. This guy is supposed to be protecting us. And again, I love the people that will and again, I enjoy the movie for what it is, for entertainment. But the people who really champion the values that it's presenting, America,
Yeah.
freedom.
Yeah.
We want some guy who's going to violate our rights if he thinks that's the right thing to do to get the job done.
Yeah.
That's what we want. We're authoritarian at heart.
Yeah.
And if you start thinking that way, you're going to start not liking the movies. So just look at it as, like you said, black hat, white hat.
Yeah.
And yes,
It's
it
a
is
Western
modern.
in some ways
It's a
as
modern
well.
Western, and in a way, it would almost work more effectively as that.
Yeah.
But and a lot of the things that if you're watching it now that you'll roll your eyes at, him being yelled at by his superiors,
Yeah.
or like things like that. Yes, agreed. Typical scene. Not as much in 72 though. Like
Yeah.
it was mainly all these other action movies wanting to be Dirty Harry
Yeah.
that turned that into a cliche.
Yeah.
Part of the deal of being the badass is that you're always in shit with the people higher up.
Yep. No. This also spawned that cliche of like the dead partner
Yep.
who gets murdered. I mean, and this is the film series that makes fun of it. That I think by even like The Enforcer for sure, because they make that like a
That's
huge,
just trolling almost.
yeah. So I do enjoy sort of its self-aware parody that it comes to its climax by the time the Deadpool hits. But like this is the quintessential cop thriller template. So I think to acknowledge it that way.
I do want to mention Andrew Robinson.
Okay, yep.
Because this is one of the great freak roles.
Yeah.
I think like the closest thing that comes to it, I think Ted Levine gets there
Yeah.
in Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
But like he's not just like a Machiavellian super brilliant serial killer.
Yeah.
He's dangerously,
Yep.
obviously wearing it on his face.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to play, and I think that he does a really good job of it.
He does an amazing job, actually.
Especially because, like you and I recently talked about Hellraiser,
Yep.
and in Hellraiser, he's this meek, nice dude,
Yep.
and you kind of almost don't trust it
Yep.
because that's the dude from Dirty Harry.
Yep. Yeah. No. And apparently he didn't get much direction from Don Siegel. He just, I think, was perfectly cast and just said, just keep on doing what you're doing, and
Just something about the way he holds his face. Tom Noonan in
Yeah.
Manhunter does similar things where there's just something, even when he doesn't say anything, just seeing his face, you're like, oh no, this guy is broken.
Yep. And he like his laugh and everything. You really want. Well, see, that's the sort of defining moment of Dirty Harry is when he tortures him.
Yeah.
In that football field, like Andrew Robinson's performance is so well done, but at that point, you are manipulated to really cheering on that, stepping on the leg.
Yeah. And this is the thing that still goes on. In Joker,
Yeah.
I mean, spoilers for Joker.
Yeah.
When Joker pulls the trigger on that media dude,
Yeah.
the movie wants us to want him to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's sort of playing on a similar anger and a similar darkness.
Yep. I do also want to shout out Rennie Stanton, who plays Chico Gonzalez, who is Dirty Harry's partner, who does start the. It's just one of those things that I every episode I want to mention them because
Dirty Harry's partner is like Spinal Tap's drummer. It's
Yeah.
just like it's not going to work out, you guys.
Yep. Also, shout out to Albert Popwell. He plays he's in every Dirty Harry movie as a different character.
That's right. Yeah.
He is the Kenny of that film series. He's
he gots to know.
I
gots
gots
to know.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
the robber in the first one.
Yeah.
So he's part of a classic cinematic scene. So good on for him.
Yeah, that's kind of fun that they sort of tie that through, at least the first few movies anyway.
Yeah, I just love his performance in the second one as well. So brief, but damn! Anyways, look, this is a classic movie. I say it's sort of...
It's classic, but it ain't bulletproof.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you could stop and get stuck with its politics. And I think they become more... Definitely by the third one, it becomes just kind of hard to swallow.
I just feel like it's hard for anyone to take me seriously if I get my chip on my shoulder about it too politically. Because again, I have no problem watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. It's just the innocents being slaughtered. Like, why is that okay and this not? I'm not saying this is not.
Yeah.
But I am saying that if you fight this movie, you'll probably win.
Yeah.
John Rambo, a drifter, just passing through their town.
Morning! Headed north or south?
North.
Now jump in. I'll make sure you're heading the right direction, huh?
You got someplace I can eat around here?
There's a diner about 30 miles up the highway.
Is there any law against me getting something here?
Yeah, me. I want you to book this gentleman for vagrancy, resisting arrest, carrying a concealed weapon.
They knew he was innocent.
Starting to dislike you. A lot.
And they didn't give a damn.
That's okay, Warren. Don't worry about the soap. He's tough. Just save him. Try.
Don't move. I don't want you to cut your own throat.
John Rambo. One man who's been pushed too far.
You're finished! You've gone as far as you're gonna go!
Heading straight for the top. Right on top. Well, there's no way out of here except through us.
He was hunted. Trapped.
There he is! On the cliff!
And forced to fight back.
Don't push it. Don't push it. I'll give you a war you won't believe.
Teasel, you and all your men couldn't handle him before. Now, what makes you think you can handle him now?
Because God knows what damage he's prepared to do.
So, First Blood is actually based on a novel. And
By
there
David
was
Morrell, no less.
a lot of novels like this about sort of damaged Vietnam veterans trying to, readjust into the real world. And unsurprisingly, in its adaptation to the big screen, some major compromises were made. First of all, the ending, not to jump right to the beginning, but in order for this series to have a franchise, John Rambo necessarily needs to survive this movie.
Yeah, I don't think they were thinking franchise at the time, though.
And, well, the novel definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
But they even actually shot a version of it where he was killed.
Yep.
But they didn't end up going with it. But they also, I think, made a bit of a compromise because I'm fairly certain in the book he does murder a couple of the cops. Like, he has a flashback of being mercilessly cut.
Yeah.
When they're trying to forcibly shave him.
Yeah.
And in the movie, he beats the shit out of them and he escapes.
Yeah.
And in the book, he disembowels one of them with the razor and breaks another guy's neck or something.
I will take your word for it.
Then he escapes. And I haven't read the book. I read this article about when I was looking up on the movies anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give you the impression that I've read the book, but these are the compromises that they made. I think he was much crazier and much more like dangerous to the police.
Yes.
And in the movie, I think with the Brian Dennehy's character, they're trying to be a little bit balanced. Like, he's just a cop, and he thinks he's doing the right thing, and he's protecting his town, but he triggers this crazy Vietnam vet. Yeah. And between his actions and then the actions of his moron police force, Rambo gets triggered full on back into war mode. Yeah. And after the accidental, in this version, death of one of the officers, a full on manhunt goes on in these woods. Yeah. And they have no idea who they're dealing with at all. Yeah. And they're like, they're lambs to the slaughter here. Yeah. So I really like the approach that, like, both of the men are very flawed. Both of the men make mistakes, but in the movie, we're kind of allowed to like both of them in spite of it.
Oh, I think we sympathize with John Rambo a heck of a lot more than.
But we are allowed more access to Rambo than we are to the Brian Dennehy character. Yep. And he did not want any of this to happen, and it is his fault.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
All he had to do was take him to a restaurant, buy him lunch, maybe give him a room for the night. And that guy's probably gone the next day. That's one of the greatest ironies of that whole thing.
He sees this guy and correctly sees, like, this guy looks dangerous.
Sure,
and
but
he escorts him out of the town very unpolitely.
Yes.
And Rambo decides he doesn't like being treated that way, and
Yeah.
stoically walks back in to go eat at the restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it escalates. And I've worked with enough police officers to know, like, you can talk yourself into a cell, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What could have been just a conversation between you and a police officer can very quickly become,
Yeah.
cuffs on you. And that's sort of it, like, it needlessly escalates. But instead of it being, a night in the cells, it becomes a substantial body count.
Yep.
But I like that it at least attempts not to be completely black and white.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what gives this movie its edge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was a term for, like, post-traumatic stress. Well, it wasn't
PTSD,
popularized.
yeah.
It wasn't a popularized term at this point, but it's exactly what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Here, and the movie is dramatically potent, and it takes itself seriously, much in the same way when we talk about Dirty Harry and the first Dirty Harry franchise.
Yeah.
Very seriously focused.
Yeah.
And for this movie, it 100% works.
Yeah.
And it establishes the character in a very strong way.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a lot to say. It's a very action-oriented movie for Stallone, but that's what he does.
I think he has a lot to say in the latter half of the movie. But
At the end of the movie, but for most of the movie, it's action. It's him doing stuff in the woods.
Yeah.
Hunting a boar, making a trap, falling through the trees.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
climbing a mountain.
Yeah. So, it's a classic for a reason. I understand why it spawned a lot of sequels, but as we will discuss, a lot of the sequels do not resemble this in any way.
Nope.
There's no gray in the subsequent sequels. It all goes to black and white.
Yeah.
So, big fan of First Blood. That's where I start.
Well, I don't think in at least American cinema at that point, they had really sort of talked about the mental illness of PTSD, at least in relation to the Vietnam War era. This is actually loosely based off a World War II incident where the same thing happened. This drifter who had survived fighting in World War II wanted to at least come to this village, he was given not a great greeting, and then snapped. And then you stop and think about it. It's a pretty cool idea. These people are like well trained in the art of savagery killing and living out in the wilderness and whatever. It makes for a sort of almost a great monster movie in a lot of ways.
Well, and he's the difficult thing is that he's like a hero too.
Yeah.
He's like the ultimate soldier in a lot of ways.
And all he wants is a little bit of love and respect.
He gets none of it, and he is driven mad.
Yeah.
He becomes he goes from hero to monster.
Yeah, but he is made that way by the idiotic police force of this small Washington town. The first 2/3 of this movie are like thrilling. Like my heart was going boom, boom, boom. Even when Stallone was riding off in the motorcycle without the helmet, that's all him.
Yeah.
Granted, it's like pyrotechnics going off at a certain point, but then we see him climbing on like a cliff, much like this, and then like almost 10 years later, he'll do it again in Cliffhanger.
Yeah,
but
he legitimately busted his ribs jumping into the trees off of that cliff.
Yeah.
And again, no stunt double.
Yeah, like this is the time of the action hero where there are bumps and bruises and broken bones and concussions and whatnot. And I was kind of impressed with that because a lot of action films today, at least by big budget studios, there's a lot of CGI and, actors jumping off mats with wires and everything.
At the risk of sounding old, one of the great things about the 10 movies you and I are talking about is there's not one fucking frame of CGI.
Yeah, like it's either stuntmen or the actors themselves doing it.
Yeah.
So I at least want to give a shout out. It made me sort of remind me of an earlier Stallone action film, Nighthawks. Do you remember that one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like the big thing about the big splash about that movie, at least in advertising of it, besides Rutger Hauer as this villain, was the big budget stunt at the end where he's dangling from this I don't know, what would you call it, gondolas or whatever, that these two
wire gondola thing.
Yeah, and he is dangling from one, and in the big wires, and if it ever broke, he would fall into the river and die just from the impact. So he was generally risking his life in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so him climbing on, that cliff, that's him in that look of fear. That's really Stallone doing that look of fear. So where I think it kind of, for me, stopped it from being, and it's still a classic movie. You can argue whether this is a bad movie or a good movie. It is a classic movie. I do believe it is in the film registry,
oh, yeah.
At least for aesthetic purposes. It spawned like not only the film series, but a cartoon toy line.
Well, I can't tell you if there was any bigger action franchise in small town Alberta in the 80s than Rambo. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
Until Die Hard came along.
Yeah.
Even Lethal Weapon would take second tier, I would think.
Yeah. Like the then American president, said John Rambo is a Republican.
Yes.
So in some ways he did sort of represent at least that image of. But it's that monologue, and it's that he gives at the end about how he's been treated since he's got home, and it's so beautifully done by Stallone. Like, it's actually a well written and a well acted scene.
Yes, the emotion is absolutely there, but full disclosure, I almost felt like I needed to put subtitles on to get the words. Like, I lost some of his words.
Sure.
And it was because of the performance. Like, it was appropriate performance-wise.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was a kid,
Yeah.
I actually lost some of the nuance. Because I've watched a lot of Stallone, I sort of feel like I understand him more. It's kind of like this is a weird comparison. It sounds unkind, but the more you watch The Princess Bride, the more you find Andre the Giant easier to understand.
Yes.
Because you attune to his ways.
Well, Stallone actually has a medical condition where, like, his mouth is not fully formed. I think he has, like, a vocal tick.
Right.
So that...
Well, I don't mean to disparage him that way.
No.
I do think that the scene is absolutely strong and it does work. Yeah. But I think some of the words are lost.
I agree with you. I think it shouldn't have happened at all, or it should have happened earlier in the film and by himself, like in the jungle, having him kind of like really. We see the psychosis start to happen in him, and maybe have that. I think a more appropriate ending where, like, Stallone comes out and the town's on fire, like it's just destroyed, and Richard Crenna, which is like commander.
That's his commanding officer.
He says, time to go home, John, and like Stallone goes, "Where is home?" Like, and then end credits.
Right.
I think it was just one step too much for me. And then it would have been like I'm talking like a really, really classic action thriller. It's still very good, very serious. The stunt work is amazing. If you stop and look about that's all Stallone doing that stuff, and I just go, wow.
Well, I think Richard Crenna is kind of a big actor. Was always kind of a big actor, but in a way he was very appropriate for this role. His bigness works against Stallone, so I think it was a case of good casting in that particular stunt. I like that the cops become their own worst enemy. Like they awaken this demon, but like the monster was there. They poked the monster. Right? So like he came with all of this danger in there, and that's the interesting question of the movie that the other movies are again not going to touch. Like when he's back in the jungle, when he's back in the thick of it, when he's back at war, is he in some way happier?
Yes.
This is what he knows. This is what he knows how to do.
Yep.
These guys are not even a serious threat to him. And that is interesting.
I mean I think that's something that the book at least tried to. I'm guessing at least tried to explore. This is more of a thriller than they've talked about trying to remake this more than once, and that might. They would really have to change, make this more into almost a horror thriller, where John Rambo still is kind of the anti-hero, but as psycho. Well, he is a psychopath, but I'm really make him scarier. Yeah.
The biggest of the asshole cops, the guy who gets the fall out of the helicopter and is really getting off on torturing him with the fire hose and everything in the precinct, is a guy named Jack Starrett. Or Jack Starrett. He directed a film called Ride with the Devil. Did you see that one? They're all in a motorhome and they encounter Satanists on the highway.
No, I have not.
I think in the way he was supposed to represent the worst of the police. I think the Brian Dennehy character flawed but not evil is the way I always saw him.
He soon realizes his own stupidity and what it's cost him.
The David Caruso character and that whole gang, Yokels, good old boys, flawed,
Yeah.
but not evil.
Yes.
Starrett,
Yeah.
evil.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was the guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think you were saying you wanted to see more of the psychological falling apart of Rambo in the woods.
Yeah.
I wanted to see Dennehy's side of it a little bit more. Because I just really like that actor.
No, I like Dennehy too. All right,
He's
rest in
just
peace,
always
by the
at a
way.
slow boil.
Yeah.
He's just like, he's not showing you, but you feel it coming from him.
Yeah.
This is all his fault, and he fucking knows it. He
Yeah.
won't admit it. He can't say it out loud,
Yeah,
but it
but
is
he knows.
his fault, and he needs to personally put this thing to bed just for his own sense of well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he's the villain, he's our adversary structurally in the movie.
Yeah.
I kind of feel for him to his limited degree.
Okay.
And I like that, he gets his legs taken out, literally, and he is completely bettered by Rambo.
Yep.
In one of those cases, and I've said this before in the podcast, where our adversary is defeated but not killed.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep. Yep.
And in a lot of action movies, it doesn't work. I mean, we've had
Yeah.
this conversation before, too, where some guy kills 100 minions
Yeah.
to get to the big bad, and then is like, you're not worth it.
Yeah.
That pisses me
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
This is a nice compromise,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, his life is left shattered.
Yeah.
He's not walking away unclean from this.
No.
So, in some ways, his fate might be worse.
But I think that my guess is that they would have spent more time on that in the book. And if I think given equal weight to these two adversaries and us having mixed feelings about both of them, that really would make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, you can't really disparage First Blood. It is one of the great action movies of the 80s.
Yeah. Well, I was surprised how well made it was. Just because my memory of the Rambo films are loud explosion and very cartoonish.
Yeah.
Where this
Not this one.
Not this one. Like this is a thrill act. Like I'll say thriller and then action. I do love the look on Dennehy's face when the first police officer is killed, and he's just like, oh,
yeah.
That's the moment he realizes that it's really gone out of control.
Yeah.
It was already bad when the character escaped and and that gas station exploded and everything, but that was like now people are dead, and that's when different law enforcement is brought in.
And again, like, asshole or not, they've worked together for a long time. Like,
yeah.
And it's never good
Yeah.
to have a death on duty. So, I like that I love the gray of the movie. And I wish that going forward in the franchise, we had more of that.
Yep. No, I agree. I even sort of had, what would you say, villain or hero for John Rambo?
Like, again, I think he makes that sort of metamorphosis. He was a hero, and he becomes a villain, but in that weird, inexplicable to him falling down kind of way, like, I'm the bad guy?
Yep.
But the police came and fucked with me, and, all I know how to do is defend myself, and so that's what I did.
Yeah.
But you're not in the jungle, you're not in Vietnam,
Yeah.
you're not taking orders from anybody anymore.
Yeah.
You're back in the quote-unquote real world.
Yeah.
And because of how damaged you are by what would happen to you, I don't think that registers. I think he's still at war. I think Rambo's always at war.
Yeah.
Until Last Blood. Even when he's sitting on his front porch in New Mexico or whatever, he is still fucking at war.
Well, that's what I'm saying. These two are maturing candidates.
Yeah.
They are addicted to violence. They secretly want it. They are, in fact, created serial killers.
How did he happen to bump into these human traffickers?
Yeah.
Well, maybe he just put himself there.
That's what I'm saying.
But that's a question for another movie. Is there anything more we should say about First Blood?
No, First Blood is fucking awesome.
Eastwood is back in full force as Dirty Harry and Magnum force. Jimmy Riley, big-time racketeer. Lou Guzman, narcotics king.
What's happening?
J.J. Wilson, well-known pimp. There are killers on the loose, dressed like cops, and they always use a Magnum.
You and your partner are back on homicide.
It's a little dramatic, isn't it, Briggs? Not your usual style.
It's meant to be, Callahan.
Look, this thing might be bigger than even we think it is. This is the cream in the bottle, Callahan. Someone's trying to put the courts out of business.
Magnum Force.
Yep.
Well, Magnum Force strangely has some stuff in common with Rambo, First Blood Part 2, and that because of the success of the previous movie, they're pouring a lot of resources into this.
Mm-hmm.
They know that there's going to be a lot of fan expectation. We're going to want a big movie. We want to take the next big bold step in Dirty Harry. What's he going to be after? What's he going to be tackling this time? And I think the movie is a sort of successful in at least sort of making Harry's world bigger and raising the stakes. The tricky thing is that Harry is this, quote, rebel authoritarian, right? Like that's what we've been established, right? He's got a badge and a gun, but he don't follow a lot of rules.
He hates the system.
So to put Dirty Harry against this sort of secret coven of like crooked cops that are going around executing killers that are getting away with it, that are slipping through the legal nets, is basically putting Dirty Harry against Dirty Harry.
Which I think is a brilliant idea.
If they'd explored it, absolutely.
Yep.
But Dirty Harry's the good guy, and these cops are the bad guy. The most obviously represented by Hal Holbrook, which just seems like at first he's the guy who's tying up the knots that's causing all the problems. But he's only doing that because in his heart, he would rather just shoot a dude in the face. In his heart, he would rather just be Dirty Harry. And in making everything bigger for the second Dirty Harry movie, they also made some of the problems bigger. One of the things that I hate about this movie is how in love everybody in the movie is with Harry Callahan. All of the other cops want to be Harry Callahan, and every fucking woman in the movie wants to sleep with Harry Callahan. Every single one of them, right? And it's gone from like it being at least aware of itself to, if it is still aware of itself, kind of gross on that spec. And you're right, the concept of these like the King of New York cops, right, that are just so sick of getting raspberried by these criminals that they've spent years of their lives trying to incarcerate, and that the smallest thing, you know, these guys get to lie and cheat all of their lives, but if you guys forget to cross a T or dot an I or lose your temper during an interview once, it all fucking falls apart. Like, we can relate with that frustration, not to the point of shooting a dude in the face, but there's real meat to this, which is what makes it kind of frustrating. They have great ideas here, but the movie opens like a Bond movie, right? Close-up of the revolver and the overlap of Harry Callahan. So is this a dumb cop superhero movie, or is this like a socially conscious thriller with a message? And in the end, and I know it's a beloved film, it's kind of neither. It's not as good as Dirty Harry, but it's strangely more complex than Dirty Harry, and it definitely continues to press the buttons. You know, they make sure once again that those bad guys that are getting murdered are really bad. This is a pimp that'll feed drain cleaner down a prostitute's throat if he's not like you know, and these guys that get out of court and they drive away in a limo, basically flipping the bird at the at the cops and at the press, and like They get you kind of mad and not necessarily on side, but you get it. But it's all in service of what in the end is just a revenge shoot 'em up. A good, fairly entertaining revenge shoot 'em up. But it's just not as smart or as deep as it wants to be or should be. That's where I start.
Somewhere John Milius is probably giving you a secret hug.
Oh, yeah?
Because he would completely agree with you.
Okay.
There is a draft. I mean, he is credited with, I think, writing the screenplay of this movie. We'll talk about actors and their egos and sort of out of control. This is actually based off a original source, but it's not original source material, but a series of novels. There's a Dirty Harry novel series.
I've not read any of it. I don't know anything about it.
Well, I mean, they did obviously deviated from the books, but in the original concept, John Milius wrote Dirty Harry as sort of this real loner, like his sex life is visiting prostitutes. Like he doesn't connect well with the outside world a whole bunch, especially with women. It was Eastwood that added that whole angle of that
his neighbor wanted to sleep with him, and his secretary wanted to sleep with him, and the fucking girl at the coffee shop wanted to sleep with him.
Well, but I mean, like the girl next door, and that whole angle was just all Eastwood's ego, because he was dating women at the time that looked very much like that actor. So it was just like, ew. It sort of took away what Milius was kind of going for, where here is this sort of broken human being, so addicted to the job, and so, and has his own moral code. That
in its way, Rambo's more honest about this character.
Yeah.
Harry Callahan likes to shoot people. He likes delivering justice, and he likes doing it his way, and on some level he gets off on it.
Yeah.
And not only does he think it's cool, but everybody around him thinks it's amazing too. Yeah. At least Rambo's this like struggling loner who seems tortured.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's and like this film also is a huge cartoon. Also, I mean, not that the original film also had scenes that really had nothing to do with the overall narrative, but we're still sort of exploring the sort of psychology of Harry. There's this scene where involving an airplane that has nothing to do with the overall story at all, and it's just there to show you just how Looney Tune crazy Dirty Harry really is.
Well, it's like the scene at the beginning of the Dirty Harry. Do you feel lucky, punk?
Yeah.
It's that version. And this happens in almost all of the Dirty Harry movies. Yeah. There'll be an adjacent crime that he just happens to be there for. Yeah. And it's silly every time, but it's also kind of what we're there to see.
Yeah.
So
but it's so ridiculous, though.
Yeah.
Like, it feels so foreign to what has happened all before. Like, at least at that point, everything sort of seems somewhat grounded in that police cop kind of things, but this is like jihad terrorists that he's taking down in an airplane. It feels just completely separate and like cartoonishly goofy from what had come before, and it feels so out of step. And that doesn't quite seem like Milius as well. He was more concerned with what I would call like sort of like the neo-noir angle of the Dirty Harry series, and this feels like a cartoon.
Mm-hmm. Entertaining again, though. Again, I'm feeling very negative. Sadly.
Well, maybe the idea of the cops is strong because in a lot of ways they're just like Harry. Like, what right does he have to morally judge? And they really should have played more with it. You have like David Soul, and you have Robert Urich, and you have
Tim Thomerson.
Yeah, like all like very, very capable. So I kind of felt like they did need to explore that just a little bit more. We did have some scenes with it.
Well, I thought it was interesting, the final confrontations with Hal Holbrook, again, who is the chief that was yelling at him earlier in the movie, this big obstacle.
With the side sign of villain now.
But again, we're not necessarily surprised by it, but he kills criminals, and in his mind, Harry isn't a criminal.
Yeah.
So even though Harry spilled all these beans and killed all of his cohorts and like upset the apple cart completely, he drives away from Harry, leaving him alive, thinking, look, in the end it's going to be your word against mine, and you have a history of violence and I don't.
Yeah.
But Harry, unlike him, is fucking willing to kill the guy.
Yep.
And he doesn't shoot him in the back, but it's close enough. Right? His car drives away and explodes.
Yeah.
And is that heroic?
No.
Because that's the climax of the fucking movie.
Yeah, I know. Look, once again, Dirty Harry is a serial killer. I'm coming back to this whole Manchurian Candidate where, secretly, there's probably some little, button in the back of his head saying, danger now, go agent. Because he just randomly saves all those people on the airplane. Where does that come from? It feels so alien. And even the side story with Sonny, the character, Adele Yokoshika is the actor. It just feels so different from everything that's come before. It feels like a false note for the Dirty Harry character.
Well, it definitely feels less real. Not that the first movie was real, but it has that sort of that 70s crime movie feel of real.
Yeah.
And this movie less so. This feels again closer to a big James Bond kind of thing. Yeah. Like that airport hostage taking thing is sort of like the negative side of having your budget explode.
Yeah.
In the original, he's in a coffee shop and there's a few gunshots and a car runs over a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
But now it's the sequel.
Yeah.
So he's driving a fucking plane.
Yeah. It's like, when did we get here?
Yeah, exactly.
No, like this is like Dirty Harry 5 and 6 maybe when you do that. But
it's not as consciously silly and over the top as the second Rambo movie, but it's not far off point.
No, it is not. And this is also a small gripe, and this is just for aesthetics. Not that there wasn't daylight sequences in the first Dirty Harry, but there was a lot of night sequences, and that feels a little more characteristic for that neo-noir type of thing, where this movie is bathed in a lot of San Francisco sunny lights. It's cool because I've been to San Francisco, so it's neat to see, like, I've been inside that ship, and it is kind of a neat sequence done where he's got to, use his sound more than vision in that subway sequence. But a lot of this movie is shot during the day, and I just kind of went, give me some more darkness a little bit, which is like sudden impact is bathed in darkness. So just a little gripe there. I did like the end sequence inside that old ship.
Yeah.
And part of it, maybe it's just because I've been there, but just that little complaint of it turned into a silly, goofy action film and missed that heart of detective neo-noir a little bit.
Classic sequel move. A little bit bigger, a little bit darker, a little bit dumber.
Yeah.
And it still works. It still holds together and functions as a thriller. But I can't help watching it thinking how it could have been so much more.
Yeah.
His orders not to engage the enemy.
He's got 36 hours to complete the mission and reach the extraction point.
We're going down. You're not going anywhere.
I'm telling you to abort. Double-crossed and left behind enemy lines.
You're the one who's making the mistake.
Yeah, what mistake?
Rambo.
And now, he's getting out any way he can. Rambo, what most people call hell, he calls home. No man, no law, no war can stop him. Sylvester Stallone is back as Rambo, First Blood, Part 2.
So, Rambo, First Blood, Part 2?
Yep. George P. Cosmatos.
And James Cameron.
Yep. He was writing Aliens and this film at the same time.
So say what you will about, bring us the sequel now. They didn't, shortchange them. They brought talent on board. I mean, I guess James Cameron was not yet James Cameron as we know them, but it wasn't like they sloughed this off on, the second unit team or some up-and-comer that they think might have talent. They wanted this to... They saw what happened with First Blood, and they wanted to capitalize on this.
Yep.
It's not called Show Friends. It's called Show Business.
Nice.
So I get why this movie happened. Okay.
You'll be shocked to know that Stallone's ego might have had an issue with this movie. Even James Cameron goes on record and kind of goes, well, I did write a screenplay to this movie, but it certainly wasn't quite that. So, yeah.
This movie, unlike First Blood, which was much more interested in the inside of John Rambo, is much more interested in the outside of John Rambo.
Yeah.
By that, I literally mean his oiled up musculature and bandana comes into play.
It's raining men.
It is not completely heterosexual.
Nope.
There's a great undercurrent of this because of course when I was a kid I didn't feel or look for this. And Top Gun is the most infamous of this, but I do think it's throughout a lot of these 80s action movies. Like if you want to look for it,
it's there.
And I definitely think it's here.
Oh yes.
There's a lot of appreciation of the physical
Stallone's
male
back
form.
muscles especially.
But
that should be a meme, honestly.
But that is a notable change. Like I'm not wrong. Like,
no.
The first movie was not distracted with these things.
No,
and it wasn't trying to portray him as super awesome.
I'm trying to imagine like the writer David Morrell, the writer of the novel, watching this movie and what he would like thought.
Well, he cashed the check, I'm sure. So like,
but he had at least some emotional attachment to the character. Sure. So to see this.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, we open and he's in jail.
Yeah.
But his commander talks to him and, want to bring him back into the fold because Chuck Norris missing in action style. They believe that there have been men left behind in Vietnam. And who better than John Rambo to go lead this front?
Yeah.
But then, of course, there's the sinister powers that be.
The man.
Yeah.
We'll say the man.
It's too much of a political hot potato and too much of an ugly news story to let out that there's been people held captive this long and we haven't done anything about it. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. We're going to the same thing with Dirty Harry, always flipping the bird to the people in charge, right?
Yeah.
You guys can't do it. Just send me in there. I am the solution to all problems.
Yeah.
And this becomes the ethos of every movie going forward, that the solution to every problem will be violence.
Yeah. Libertarians right now are just like jerking off. Sorry, I said that.
That's fine, because it's not untrue.
Yeah.
So the journey from a arguably, at least attempting to be deep, sort of psychological action thriller.
Yeah.
We jumped several gears up into just full on, I think, dumb action movie.
Oh, it's a cartoon.
But not unentertaining. Okay?
Once again, I agree.
I'm going to talk a lot of shit about the movie, and there's a lot of like eye-rolling things. The whole love interest angle of the movie, and like the bad dude from Karate Kid. Like there's like lots of shit here that is like at one hand face palming, but at the other hand, perfect.
Steven Berkoff's in this movie. Do you remember Steven Berkoff?
Oh, yeah. So it somehow manages to be a awesome bad sequel?
Yeah. Like it's like they used the same characters, but they gave us something really completely different. They really did. Like, this movie almost, I wouldn't say right from the get-go is go, but pretty quickly, like as soon as he's in that helicopter, or not helicopter, that jet or airplane, and he has trouble with his parachute. That movie's go, really, for a whole bunch of it.
Yeah.
There's maybe a couple of like pauses on a boat where, they have lovey-dovey eyes with the freedom fighter.
But those are always the time whenever you're given time to stop and think about what's going on, it's a problem.
Yep, absolutely. And then it goes, no, move along. See this here? Pow!
Yeah, but then shit's gonna blow up.
Yeah.
And look at this awesome knife. I remember, for whatever reason, in elementary school, kids were fucking obsessed with the Rambo knife.
Yeah.
With the secret compartment and the handle and the compass and the thread and the needle and like...
we thought him coming out of the mud was awesome.
And the headband. I don't know what the headband does for him other than like be aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
And he totally does pose for the camera.
Oh, dude, it's not... oh, my God, we're already here.
Well, like, I mean, what else is there to talk about in the movie? Like, honestly, we could go more into the plot, but why? And like, technically speaking, does the movie deliver as an action movie? Yes, I think we've covered that. Yeah. But I think the thing that makes it both hilarious and awful is what we're talking about, is the posturing.
Oh, my Lord. I call this the Stallone brand of cinematic acting, where and you watch his hands, they curl up into a fist, both of them, and then he flexes as he walks like a robot. That's deliberate. like he would do like push-ups or sit-ups and weights right before each take, so his muscles would be like premium ripped, along with obviously oiling him down and everything. But this is him. I know this is television and radio, but like it's like a robot in a lot of ways. His pecs move to his arms. They are in unison.
There is a scene early in another fantastic 80s action movie, Predator, where Carl Weathers and Arnold Schwarzenegger greet each other and smack their arms, and there's this big bulging sweaty muscly thing, and it's actually kind of cringy and embarrassing, but Rambo, the whole movie is that scene.
Yep. That's his whole performance.
And I don't think it was meant to be funny, but I do think that it is funny.
It's funny and awesome at the same time. It's just, wow.
Weird Al Yankovic made a movie, UHF, where he parodied Rambo, and honestly, like, they're not far off.
No.
Like, the oiled, glistening chest, and the fact that he barely ducks behind things.
Yeah.
He walks towards somebody who's firing a machine gun at him, who can't hit him, and he just fires a bow and arrow.
Yep. Like, and explodes, if I'm not mistaken. Like, the arrow was
it's like a credit-proof movie. It's one of those infamous, like I can't say it's good. I can't say it's good, but I can't say that I hated watching it.
It's entertaining on that sort of candy, I will apologize to my good taste and brain.
Yeah.
It's almost... It's not quite that it's so bad. No, it's not quite the so bad it's good.
It's not that. It's something else.
That's the next one.
Yes.
But it just walks that fine line of cinema candy in a lot of ways. I will. There's one scene though where I lose all respect for any sort of heroism for this character. Like, clearly dick move. He's being chased by the Russians, so he actively goes to that village and endangers every single person in that building.
This will slow them down.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, Rambo, dick move. He actively puts other people in harm's way by doing that, but whatever. No, like, the logic in this movie is bizarre. But that's 80s action. You know, it's a certain subgenre where you have to understand what you're digesting, that it's going to be big bodies greased down. You know, the laws of physics do not apply in this movie. We've got one-liners, you know, we've got mullets, we've got, like, it is like homoeroticism action.
Well, and also just that thing, like, even if you haven't seen the movie, it feels like you've seen the movie. The second the, government red tape dude is introduced, oh, this guy's going to be full of shit, and Rambo's going to end up punching him in the face. Yeah. The second they introduce the love interest, you're like, oh, she's going to fall in love with him and then die.
Yeah.
And, it's just like, and you're never wrong. You're never
No, like, this is the movie this is like to entertain, I guess you could say, like the masses, like the soldiers that got came home broken and scarred from Vietnam, and this was kind of their candy for them. This was the candy for the how do we say this? Just you're lovers of action films, I guess.
Well, it's also, again, like I say, a salve to everyone who's still butthurt about America losing Vietnam. This is the fantasy version where we go back and we win it. We win it for Ronald Reagan.
Exactly.
And that's just, again, like the fact that his victory is a righteous one, and he comes back and he screams like, I want these people to love me as much as I love my country, or whatever the fuck he says. I can't remember the line. But like,
and we died for them.
In the previous movie, he would come back further damaged, more broken, more dangerous, more fragile. And no, now he is this fucking immortal. This like unquestionable, unbreakable hero. And like the only thing he could do to become a bigger hero would be to, I don't know, work with the Taliban or something.
But just the juxtaposition from the end speech of the first one to the second one, you're just like, wow, like that is kind of like really powerful. What the fuck is this? It is just like, and like this is almost this and Cobra was probably just where, and I think you talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
When Stallone, when like just you were just smidge off the first time. You started at when, but it's George P. Cosmatos. He was the director who, if you needed something done on time and your big movie star was secretly directing the film, that's...
And I must remind everyone, this was the 80s, the age of excess.
Yeah.
Like, the amount of cocaine on set probably couldn't be adequately measured on any man-made scale.
Yeah.
Like,
at least in the studios in LA, yes. But, yeah. No, I mean, it's... I don't know.
It is what it is.
Hey, and I think there's actually 2 versions of this as well. I sort of like in your copy. Does like he start in
prison?
Prison, yeah. The one I have, he doesn't.
Oh,
it's weird. I don't know.
To remember, am I blurring something? I thought he started off in prison in that movie. Am I crazy?
Okay. He did. I don't know. We did.
To be continued.
Yeah.
Are we good on Rambo?
San Francisco. Sprawling, picturesque, dynamic. 8th largest cosmopolitan city in the United States. Like every big city, it has its share of crime and violence.
God! Don't let him kill me! He wants the car right now!
San Francisco is the only city with a cop like Dirty Harry.
What are you gonna do?
Give him one.
Clint Eastwood is the enforcer.
The mayor of this pig city has been taken prisoner of war by the People's Revolutionary Strike Force.
What do you want?
You. What are you protecting these people for? You know how many they've killed?
Sacrifices have to be made, mister.
You got the wrong number, boy. We don't deal in violence.
What do you deal in?
Waiting for all you white honkies to blow each other up so we can move right on in.
You don't give up, do you?
Sometimes.
Not you.
I'll tell you what you are to me, little man. You're just a maggot who sells dirty pictures.
Harry's got a lady partner. This is a first for him.
Now I want you very slowly to put down that weapon and then on the deck and spread your legs.
Are you kidding me?
Okay, the enforcer. All right, this is a kind of an unintentionally funny one too. It's weird how the parallels keep happening between Rambo and Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
But I get the feeling like what they're going for here is a forward-thinking Dirty Harry movie, like a progressive Dirty Harry movie.
Sure.
So he's only a little bit racist and sexist in this movie,
Okay.
as opposed to like just owning it and wearing it as proudly as he wears his police badge.
Yep.
But like, there's this weird, almost condescending air. Like, I know they really want to make this strong female character, but she keeps on acting like such a fucking girl throughout the movie.
Oh man,
And,
the humor in this movie that draws a lot on the female partner.
Yeah,
it's cringy. Like, it's just like, oh,
it's unfortunate. And like, it's aged badly, not because of the political landscape changing, but because it was kind of clumsy at the time, and they probably should have known it. And this was their attempt at like a strong female figure in an action movie, and like, maybe for the time it counts, but by today's standards, this actress, she was on Cagney and Lacey. I'll find her name here. Anyway, she's kind of hung out to dry, and it's unfortunate.
And Dirty and Harry Callan is not really nice.
Ty Daly.
Ty Daly, yeah. I have the enforcer, Clint versus third wave feminism.
Well, and also some disgruntled Vietnam veterans. In another way, it could have been Dirty Harry versus Rambo, which is another thing that kind of put a smile on my face.
Yeah.
And I think that the lead actor of the gang of like people who are just it's weird because they're sort of like half hippie, half veterans made up of the group. Like these people don't seem to mix together well at all. Yeah. But they're like ransoming. They're trying to make money and extort and cause anarchy and whatever. They're like scary hippies or whatever.
Well,
the leader of that group is trying to do the same thing that the villain in the first Dirty Harry did with his crazy eyes. Yeah. But it is not working for me. Yeah. It kind of comes off as like, I'm laughing at you, not with you right now. Yeah. But also in a way that I did kind of like enjoy it. Yeah. And the first kill he does when he sneaks up behind this guy with a knife, like... Yeah. He's got a total murder boner on his face.
I know, it's bizarre.
It's just like, I know that maybe that was supposed to be scary, but it came off funny to me, but I still enjoyed it. Yeah. So I'm going to let that go.
Okay, fair enough. No, the Dirty Harry films like taking like real life incidences in the American psyche and put it onto that screen, and you can find that uncomfortable. The same time around the Zodiac Killer, when he was doing his things, San Francisco had also had just been reeling from a group of black serial killers, a terrorist group called the Black Zebras, where they would
go around, get into that too.
Yeah, and go around and target essentially white people and kill them. So it was teased a little bit in the original Dirty Harry. They kind of went. But here it is in full force. And I will give this film this credit this much, that they were even sort of talking about institutional racism at this point, because the administration in this movie so badly wants to point these crimes on a group of black hoodlums, and Dirty Harry's like, no. Well, that's not what this is.
That's very politically correct. It's mighty white of you, Lee.
Okay, but whatever. Fine.
But again, much like the feminist angle that they're going for here, the sort of racial politics that they're trying to play with, it's not handled well.
No, it's not.
It's not handled well, even a little bit. Yeah. It's nice that they're trying, and again, at the time that it was maybe considered progressive. But watching it now, it is awkward.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So, plot a little bit. Dirty Harry saves the day at the beginning of the movie like he always does, and he gets punished for it again like he always does. And he dresses down this female applicant fairly successfully and correctly, I guess. Yeah. But then ends up being partnered with her. Yeah. And he has to save her life from notable incompetence, and she throws up during an autopsy sequence.
She stands in the line of fire with a bazooka, and Dirty Harry has to pull her aside.
Yeah. And she dies to save Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
She gives... Because the partner's got to die every single time.
And that finally gives her respect. Yeah, no.
But what does Harry learn? Does, he likes her, but then she dies, and then it's fucking on. Right? All of this would have been interesting if the racially charged murders taught Harry something, or being partnered with a female who he initially underestimated taught Harry something, but he is a goddamn brick, right?
I'm not disputing that, and it's hard to watch. Like I said, the humor that the filmmakers try, it's just like, oh, guys, I'm trying to imagine someone like Ronda Rousey, or even Charlize Theron, female action stars of today, look at this movie and go, bitch, please. Because it's
I found this herself by dying.
I know. And I'm screaming at the film saying, get some shoes on her. Get some shoes on her. There's the chase sequence where you're just even in 1976 you would have figured out, put some sneakers on, girl.
No, and this problem goes on for years and years to come. Yeah. There's a not necessary remake of Desperate Hours with Mickey Rourke. Yeah. Lindsay Krause plays a female police officer. Yeah. She gets shot through the leg, and she wraps the bandage over the nylon on her leg. Yeah. And it's just why do you have to make the female cop, for lack of a better word, such a girl? Yeah. Every fucking time. Yeah. It's so irritating.
I know.
And they're almost overcorrecting to it at this point. Now anytime there's a female police officer, she makes everyone else around them look stupid. But for years and years, there was either no female character, or she was trying and failing to prove her worth. Yeah. And it's just unfortunate that that's what the movie leveraged itself on. Yeah. But the relationship between Tyne Daly and Clint Eastwood is much more interesting than the random nonsense of this pretty weak sauce band of villains that we get.
Yeah, they're so cartoony that it's hard to take them even remotely seriously.
He'll kill his own people if they get wounded because he doesn't want to slow down the works or get their names out into the public. And it doesn't feel soulful, like he was ruined by war. It just feels like he gets a lot of sexual joy out of creating chaos and killing people, and it's just not explored even a little bit.
Yeah. No, but I mean, if you stop and you think about it, a lot of the villains in the Dirty Harry series are like, they're not deep. They're so cartoonish and they're snarly, and like you could almost see the drool from at least one of the characters. Like they're so over the top, even with the monologuing. You're just like, oh, let it end, folks. And I guess with this one, this follows back in the whole right-wing cartoonishy of what the Dirty Harry series is. The bazookas just seem, once again, so out of place in a lot of ways of what I would say is a true Dirty Harry film. Like, it just feels
and
so
that, I think, was maybe their attempt to make it bigger. They weren't able to, and I don't think they even tried to make it a bigger scale movie than the second installment.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was the next Dirty Harry, not the biggest, best Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
Very clearly. But it's, I guess, a little bit dismissive, like, if that's really how they're approaching it. Like, how great could the movie have ended up being?
Yeah.
If you're going to make a Dirty Harry movie, get excited, want to make the best Dirty Harry movie ever.
Yeah.
Again, like, I say all this terrible shit about it, but there is some entertainment value to the movie.
I found this kind of a chore to get through. I guess I think that the movie was sort of annoying me so much. The villains weren't doing it for me. I thought, like the jokes really landed like a thud for me.
And we hadn't had a lot of, like, we had one-liners.
Yeah.
But we didn't have, like, comedy bits.
Yeah, like, we had the infamous, classic line from the first one, and in the second one, a man's got to know his limitations. What is the catch line for this one? Do you remember? Because I really can't.
Well, that's statement enough in itself.
Yeah, like, I think it might be swell, but I don't know. Like, it just seemed very loud, and the script felt clumsily put together.
And again, the climactic sequence, the bad guy is running away.
Yeah.
He's run out of ammunition.
Yeah.
He's standing alone on a platform.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood shoots him with a bazooka and he explodes.
Yeah.
Credits.
Yep.
Like, well, that's another police murder. I know he just killed your partner, and I know that there was no psychiatrist in the world that was going to fix this guy.
Yeah,
and I don't feel bad that he died, but you clearly just murdered that person.
Yeah.
And again, it's not his first, nor will it be his last murder, but that's what we end on, right?
Yeah.
He didn't have to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
He chose to pull that trigger.
Yeah. Even how they handle the administration as sort of bumbling Three Stooges, it just feels kind of cheap. They're not yelling at him this time. They're like, "Oh, Harry, you're
making us look bad."
Yeah. All about the press. Like, it felt. I will do a special shout out once again to Albert Popolo, who this time actually is given kind of a role as Big Ed Mustafa.
Yeah.
I think when he's on the screen, the film does sort of kind of jump in a good direction. It's a good secondary character. I know that the storyline kind of is a red herring and goes nowhere.
Well, he's a bad guy, but he's a bad guy that is sort of being exploited by the, quote, good guy.
Well, yeah, and like you do sort of... He does get screwed over by Dirty Harry, so you feel for him. So at least I'll say...
He plays ball, and he pays the price for it.
Yes, he does.
And this is the kind of authoritarian that we cheer on.
Right? Yep. So, honestly, I think he's probably only the thing that I remember positively about The Enforcer, because I did not like this movie.
Well, I did think it was kind of a cool move when, like, they bailed him out to use him as part of their scheme. Like, that's sort of an interesting plot point of the script, but I don't know. I think there's something interesting about, like, seeing what the movie was trying to do and how horribly it's failing at doing it.
Yeah.
That it becomes unintentionally funny. I guess it's the unintentional humor of the movie that I ended up enjoying.
Okay, so I didn't.
And the struggle on Tyne Daly's face, because, like, in one point, like, this is a good, important feminist role, but on the other hand, it's so handled terribly.
Yeah,
but
see.
someone's gonna get this part, and it's me.
Yeah.
And
yeah, no, see, the badness was not humorous to me.
There ends part 1 of Rambo versus Dirty Harry. We're getting right into the meat of it. There'll be 5 more reviews and one heck of a long rank next episode of Rank and Review. But if you need something to fill your ears with in the time in between, check out the Terror Table podcast, check out the Shelf Shedding Movie Show, and make sure you tell all of your friends about Rank and Review. And thank you so much for your ears. I really appreciate it.